Lesson 9.2 is on solving quadratic equations. Our first lesson of this unit was actually on graphing quadratic functions. So graphing the quadratic functions, here's the standard form of a quadratic function. And it's written in function notation, which is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And remember, we could also just say y equals here. So here's an example of one of the functions that we graphed. We found the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and more points, and graphed it. So the next piece that we're looking at is actually solving quadratic equations. So quadratic equations are quadratic functions that are set equal to a value. So if you look, our standard form is that same ax squared plus bx plus c, but it's equal to a value, in this case 1. So this is an equation that we solve versus this function that has two variables, x and y, in it that we graphed. So we graphed these. And these we are going to solve. And solving means what value of x would make the equation true. So here's an example. And if we wanted to solve x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0, we would try to figure out what values of x make this true. So that's what we're going to do for about the next 4 lessons. And we're going to have different strategies to do that. So again, here's our form of a quadratic equation, where it's a quadratic set equal to a number, in this case 0. A, B, and C are integers. That's the standard form. So the solutions that we're talking about that would make this true, or the numbers that make this true, are solutions. We also call them roots of the equation. One more thing that we call them is we also call them zeros. So solutions, roots, and zeros are all the same thing. What we'll find out is that they are also, if we were to graph the related function, they end up being the x-intercepts. And we'll talk about why a little bit later. So all of these 4 things, the x-intercepts, the zeros, the roots, the solutions, are the same thing. So the solutions of the quadratic equation are called zeros. They're also called roots, we said. And where they are is those x-intercepts right here. If we look at a graph, they're the solutions to the related equation. So here, our zeros, or our solutions, end up being the x values, -1 and 3. So we can take and solve a quadratic equation by graphing, looking at the graph, and finding the x-intercepts. And then we can also solve them by factoring and setting each factor equal to 0. You've done that before in Algebra 1. You've also used the quadratic formula, which you do need to memorize, and that's in the next lesson. And then we're going to do something new this year, which is completing the square. That's new to Algebra 2. So graphing and factoring is this lesson here. So I'll pause this here so you can have a break, and then we'll move on.